Hello. We welcome you all from all over the world to today's EIR Roundtable, Solve the Immigration Crisis with Development, what you need to know about the strategic significance of Pope Leo's encyclical. This is panel 1, titled A Dialogue of Civilizations, Development, or World War III. 25 years after the events of September 11th, 2001, we must ask, if a September 11th event occurred today, would it result in a rapid or perhaps instant thermonuclear confrontation between the United States and Russia, the United States and China, or the United States and Russia and China? The phone call that took place between then-President George W. Bush and Vladimir Putin on that day 25 years ago avoided that. Taking a lesson from history, several concerned American citizens have recently initiated a letter requesting that Archbishop John Charles Wester implore Pope Leo XIV to consider playing the role that Pope St. John XXIII played during and after the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, that of a mediating moral force between President John F. Kennedy and Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev. The new letter includes the following sentence, quote, "On October 28th, when Khrushchev announced the pullout of the missiles from Cuba in 1962, Pravda reprinted the Pope's message praising the Pope's realism on the question of peace. At that time, the Pope's encyclical, Pacem in Terris, Peace on Earth, was a central part of that discussion about peace. Today, Pope Leo's encyclical, Magnificat Humanitas, on the grandeur of humanity, has been released, in which the Pope says each generation inherits the task of shaping its own era, of guiding history to become a place where the dignity of every person is safeguarded, justice is promoted, and fraternity is made possible. In the skein of history, 25 years is an instant. A much longer arc of history not only exists, it shapes what we do, what we see, and who we are. 2,500 years, not 250 years or 25 years, is the minimum period of time in which this very moment in which we now live is shaped. Only 3 months after the attacks of September the 11th, in December of 2001, the founder of Executive Intelligence Review, Lyndon LaRouche, said, "To escape the popular fog of current mass media ravings and confusion among governments, a certain principle must guide us each step of our journey toward the truth about September 11th. Jot this down. Men make history, but history makes men, and vice versa." Those words, properly understood, echo the greatest wisdom of all ancient and modern arts of statecraft, from such sources as Solon of Athens, the classical Greek tragedies, the dialogues of Plato, and the great modern historical dramas of William Shakespeare and Friedrich Schiller. 6 months after September 11th, Lyndon LaRouche spoke in Brazil in June of 2002 to Brazil's Superior War College. This is what he had to say.
The visit began with a unique dialogue at a conference held in the auditorium of the Latin American Parliament, at an event sponsored by the Sao Paulo ADESG, which is the Association of Graduates of the prestigious Superior War College.
What's the solution? As I said at the outset, the problem today is denial. People are afraid. They're afraid of power. They're afraid of the power of the IMF. They're afraid of the power of the United States. And therefore, they say we have to play by the generally accepted rules among the nations of the IMF and by the United States. Therefore, when you try to solve a problem, you say, we have to find a solution within the rules. You can't violate the rules. You've got to find an alternative within the rules. But what I've indicated to you, there are no solutions within the rules. This has been a long-term process of decadence, of culture and economy. We no longer have the kind of leaders in politics we had 20 years ago or earlier. Our people coming out of our universities do not have the competence of people coming out of the universities a generation ago. We are in a decadent culture, a decadent system, which is destroying us. And you're not going to find solutions in a system which has shown that its axioms, the definitions, axioms, and postulates of the system ensure destruction. But people say, but you've got to go by the rules. What are the rules? The rules are precisely the rules, the axioms, the definitions, the postulates which have destroyed us. Why can't we change the rules? Aren't we human beings? Don't we represent nations which have get this out of the first chapter of Genesis. Is man and woman not made equally in the image of the creator of the universe and endowed with these powers? Do not we have the authority above anything on this planet to change the rules? We have the power. That's what sovereignty means. Sovereignty means the power to make the rules by which we can survive. That doesn't mean we can make any rules we want to. It means we have to have responsibility and competence, but we have the right to deliberate.
We are met here this morning in the Americas, this afternoon in Europe, and this evening in Asia. I should include also this afternoon in Africa, to deliberate in a transcontinental dialogue of civilizations. Our topic is development or World War III. Our first speaker is the founder of the Schiller Institute, the editor-in-chief of Executive Intelligence Review, and the author of the 10 Principles for a New Security and Development Architecture, Helga Zepp-LaRouche.
Thank you, Dennis, and hello to all of you in all continents, wherever you may be watching from. And I think that what unites us here to come together and think about what to do is the awareness that the world indeed faces an unprecedented political, military, economic, social, and I would say above all, moral crisis, for which solutions clearly exist. But in order to escape the clearly looming catastrophe, a fundamental policy shift has to occur. And it has to occur exactly the way Lyndon LaRouche said in his speech in Sao Paulo. It has to occur outside the rules of established thinking and outside of the axioms which led us to this crisis. In order to motivate such a radical shift in thinking, we are conducting this combined International Peace Coalition EIR roundtable meeting. Now, show the video, please.
بس
Now, on July 30th, that is yesterday, close to 50,000 refugees entered the Spanish enclave of Ceuta in Morocco. Most of them had swam along the coast. Some of them reported that it took them up to 2 hours of swimming, and obviously they were acting out of complete desperation. There are some reports that this was triggered by the recent decision of the Spanish government to regularize 500,000 immigrants, which is perfectly in accordance with the 1951 Geneva Convention on Refugees. As a matter of fact, Spain is a glorious example of sticking to that Geneva Convention of Refugees, unlike many other countries in Europe. Or it could have been triggered by a recent decision of the Constitutional Court, whereby the migrants who reach Ceuta by sea can't be automatically rejected. Now, some of the aid people from NGOs said that those who swam, they did not know that. In any case, Ceuta is a city of a little bit more than 80,000 people, and obviously has absolutely no infrastructure to accommodate 50,000 refugees. It didn't stop there. Last night, a second Spanish enclave in Morocco, Melilla, was basically stormed by another 400 to 500 migrants. And at the border, there are thousands of more trying. They're being pushed back right now by the security forces. Now, then if you go to the United States, the Trump administration gave an order that as of August 3rd, 300,000 Haitians living and working in the United States under the temporary protection status are now under orders to return to Haiti. They're working in nursing homes, health facilities, hotel services, construction, and so forth. The Republican Ohio governor, Mike DeWine, said Trump is making a big mistake because, the economy of Ohio would not function without the help of these Haitian workers. Lieutenant General Russell Honore, I don't know if I pronounce it correctly, wrote an editorial in the New York Times where he said, "This is not the America I fought for." Valls Dorsenville, the director of the Ohio Haitian Community and Help Center, said he and others are perfectly willing to return to Haiti, except there is no country to return to. And as you all know, the conditions in Haiti are of complete chaos, criminality, gangs, crimes. It's just unlivable. Now, the Department of Homeland Security has created a new deportation airline, which is from now on to deport 724, that's around the clock without interruption, to deport migrants with 7 Boeing 337 and 2 large government jets. So, the character of the United States is just completely transformed. John F. Kennedy said that America is a country of immigrants, no more. President Reagan at the time had said that the United States is a shining city to which people from the whole world are coming. Now, the migrant crisis is only one of the most obvious symptoms of the complete failure of the policies of the political order, which is just collapsing in front of our eyes. I want to situate that crisis and available solutions in the proper strategic context. For decades, LaRouche has been warning that this would happen. Starting on the 15th of August, 1971, when President Nixon went from fixed exchange rates to floating exchange rates, LaRouche warned that, these monetary policies of the Western system, of the liberal economy, if they would be continued, would lead to a new depression, new fascism, and even a new world war. Now, he updated that prognosis many, many times, and every time when the situation went into a worse direction, a branching point, increasing the liberal aspect of the economic system by deregulation of the markets, by favoring the speculators even more, he pointed with absolute crystal clarity to these consequences. And because he was so outspoken, this is why he was prosecuted, slandered, and demonized. And Ramsey Clark, the former justice minister of the Johnson administration, who came to his defense, said that this was the worst case of political bending of the justice system in the United States he ever encountered in his entire career. Because LaRouche dared to point to the consequences of these policies in hundreds and hundreds of articles and speeches, interviews, and so forth. He addressed, as you just heard in the video, the underlying axioms of thinking. That is what causes people to have these wrong ideas, and also the remedies how to get out of it. Now, his prognoses are coming true now in a horrifying way, pointing to the possibility of a complete collapse of civilization. We see right now two regional wars, Ukraine and Iran, both wars merging. There was, in the last several days, an attack by Ukraine on Bandar Azali, which is Iran's largest Caspian port and a hub for trade with Russia. The Indian former diplomat and commentator Bandra Kumar said, this is not a stray incident. It could be very well calibrated by Washington. And a similar analysis comes from an Iranian news agency called Iranian Noor News, which is close to the Iranian Security Council. And they say that all the different parts, what is now happening in Yemen, Lebanon, until Ukraine, these are all interconnected parts of an overall design. Now, the situation in Ukraine, where the NATO has been fighting Russia for 12 years, since 2014, the former head of the former general inspector of the German army, Harald Kujat, was warning a couple of days ago that the present situation has terrible parallels to August 1914. So all of this is the result of the attempt to create an unipolar world after the end of the Cold War, where, as we wrote many times, the great historical chance of 1989, when the wall came down, where there was the possibility to create a peace order, was awfully missed. What followed was the broken promise not to expand NATO 1 inch to the east, followed by many color revolutions, attempt to regime change, interventionist wars, unilateral sanctions, and especially the NATO expansion to the east eventually meant that offensive weapon systems were installed close to the Russian border, and in reality creating a reversed Cuban Missile Crisis, and now more recently, long-range weapons being deployed by Ukraine with the help of NATO and the United States deep into the territory of Russia. Now, this has been a 4.5-year war, which was always called a special military operation. But about 1 month ago, government spokesman Peskov said, we are no longer in a special military operation, we are at war. And it is very clear that Russia is starting to respond to these escalations from the side of NATO with a clear determination to finish this war with military means And one of the aspects of it is that they're cutting off Odessa for Ukraine, so making Ukraine essentially a landlocked country. Now, if you look at Iran, which is, contrary to the case of Russia, an unprovoked war of aggression, a promise which was to have diplomacy was broken 2 times. Then you had, in addition to that, the unprovoked cancellation of the Memorandum of Understanding, which had been signed on June 17th. And now this war is flaring up again after 3 days of supposed pause. It's now expanding. The first drone attack occurred in Egypt. You have the US-Saudi attacks on militias in Iraq. You have the Houthi blockade of the Red Sea. And there is the danger that this oil is exploding into a general regional war. Now, this war has changed the strategic landscape already irreversibly, because the United States, being the strongest military power on the planet, together with another very strong military power, namely Israel, they have lost that war. They could not win because there was an incredibly strong Iranian resilience. There was no regime change. A middle-sized country, could not be defeated. However, that does not mean that Iran won, because they are suffering tremendous damages and losses. So, basically, there was a restart of the war, and for 13 nights, there was a relentless striking of Iranian targets. Then it stopped, and it is generally reported, and sounds very credible, that the Pentagon at that time told Trump that the United States had become very low in munition, especially missile interceptor systems like the Patriots, the THAADs, and so forth. So the ability of the United States to, have a military presence in other parts of the world is greatly diminished. So it is reported that Trump is exasperated, that he obviously fell into the trap of Netanyahu and obviously does not see an off-ramp. Now, this combined situation has all the makings of a new world war, because the idea that one can inflict a strategic defeat on Russia is absolute insanity. Russia is, the strongest nuclear power on the planet, and they are looking at the unprecedented since 85 or 90 years ago, militarization of Europe. And, they are having a discussion in Russia that Nazism is coming back. Putin, in a recent article, basically said that this revival of Nazism is the result of Western policies after the Second World War, because the United States and Great Britain incorporated a lot of old Nazi networks, which is not a secret. Among that, the anti-Bolshevik bloc, the Operation Gehlen, and many other operations where these Nazi networks were kept and obviously continued to function in new forms. So we are looking at an extremely serious situation, because if Russia is convinced that Nazism is coming back or has come back, well, it brings forward the memory of the Great Patriotic War and what that implied in terms of losses. 27 million people in the Soviet Union had died as a result. And it does have an incredible impact on the mindset of Russia. Now, if the Strait of Hormuz is not opening soon, and the Red Sea, which has been recently closed by the Houthis, this will have an enormous consequence on the energy price, the hunger crisis, and a major famine is already pre-programmed. The UN just issued their latest, the State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World, SOFI. And they report the absolutely shocking figures that 80% of all babies in Africa between 6 and 23 months are undernourished. 80%. In 2025, more than half of the population in Africa had medium or severe food insecurity. That means every fifth African is suffering hunger. Last year, 7.8% of the world population suffered hunger. Now, that is completely unnecessary because we could easily produce all the food needed. So the world right now is threatening to fall into a full depression if these straits are not opened, worse than the 1930s, with hunger, social explosions, and one cannot avoid the suspicion that all the measures we see right now, limiting free speech, curbing civil rights and human rights, which we observe in the United States and Europe, are an anticipation by the authorities of the eruptions to come, which they cannot be blind to, that they will happen. There is still another layer of thinking of the Malthusians, and that is depopulation, and what John D. Rockefeller used to call the population bomb or overpopulation, or what Schellenhuber, the former head of the Potsdam Climate Institute, said in many speeches that his opinion was that the world can only carry 1 to 2 billion people, leaving out, what should happen with the rest of them. In that context, we should not forget the project of the Council of Foreign Relations, the so-called project of the 80s, which called for a controlled disintegration of the world economy. And you should listen to the following quote. Bad times, you may say, are exceptional and can be dealt with exceptional methods. This has been more or less true during the honeymoon period of industrialism, but it will not remain true unless increase of population can be enormously diminished. At present, the population is increasing at about 58,000 per diem. War, so far, has had no great effect on this increase, which continued through each of the world wars. War has hitherto been disappointing in this respect, but perhaps bacteriological war may prove to be more effective. If a Black Death could spread throughout the world once in every generation, survivors could procreate freely without making the world too full. The state of affairs might be somewhat unpleasant, but what of it? Really high-minded people are indifferent to happiness, especially of others. This was written by Bertrand Russell in the journal The Impact of Science on Society in 1953. Now, we propose a radically opposite approach, that we basically treat the principles of the Declaration of Independence, which after all we are celebrating the 250th anniversary of America this year, that these principles are valid for the entire population of the entire world, namely that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are the inalienable right of every human being on the planet. When the Declaration of Independence, the Declaration of Independence, therefore, is actually the founding document of the Schiller Institute. When we founded it, I only changed the Declaration of Independence for 6 or so words to make it applicable for the whole world. The reason is that every newborn child is potentially a genius, can discover fundamental principles of the physical universe, and in this way increase the relative potential population density of the planet and beyond, and in this way bring the development of the universe forward, of which man is the most advanced expression. What is needed to deal with the refugee crisis is basically to install in these countries and continents basic infrastructure in Africa, Asia, Latin America, the poorer parts of the United States, of which many look like a third world area, and poor areas of Europe, and basically industrialize these places. Africa will have by 2050 2.5 billion people. That is 1 billion people will be under 24 years old. That means we need approximately 1 billion new productive jobs in the next 24 years in Africa alone, which means we must create basic infrastructure, integrated continental transport nets, integrating highways, fast train systems, waterways, energy production and distribution, communication, and game changer projects such as the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, the GERD, the Transaqua, bringing water from the Congo to Lake Chad, the Inga dams, and other such projects. We need the Oasis Plan for Southwest Asia, connecting the entire region from India to the Mediterranean, from the Caucasus to the Gulf, which essentially is all desert, and apply the unbelievably great success by China of greening the deserts, which they have demonstrated in Xinjiang and northwest of China by basically greening areas of the size of the territory of Germany. We have to bring in that region canals. We should access aquifer. We can find underground lakes with the help of space technology. We can ionize the moisture in the atmosphere and so forth. And that way transform the deserts into gardens, into forests, into agricultural land. We should connect that with the expanding of existing development corridors like the CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, the North-South Transport Corridor from St. Petersburg to India, another corridor from connecting Iran, Iraq, Jordan, Israel, Palestine, Egypt, another corridor from India to Turkey to Europe, and this way make this region again the hub of transport and exchange of culture and ideas between Asia, Africa, and Europe, like it was during the time of the ancient Silk Road. We absolutely must move from geopolitical confrontation to economic cooperation. We must proceed with that, not with the bestial image of man of Bertrand Russell, but with the lofty idea of man which was expressed by Pope Leo XIV in the Magnificat Humanitas encyclica, where he describes that every man is in the image of God, and as Cusa would say, even an imago viva Dei, because Nicolaus of Cusa said that the creation continues through the creativity of man. Now that basically must also address the root causes of the migrant questions, which the Pope said in many speeches when he was in Spain in the beginning of June, where he said we have not only to integrate the migrants based on their dignity, which every human being has in the same way, but we have to also create the conditions so that they can stay in their home country, because everybody wants to stay in their home country much more than taking the risk of, dying of thirst in the Sahara or drowning in the Mediterranean or end up in a concentration camp around the Mediterranean. This is a formulation used by Pope Francis, which I fully agree with. Now, we have to wake up to the fact that if the present geopolitical confrontation escalates, it will lead to a world war, and that will mean with almost 100% certainty the annihilation of mankind, of everything which has been created in all the generations up to now, because the result will be a 50-year nuclear winter in which all life on the planet will disappear. We have to look at the strategic and historical situation in which we are in, and we have to make a willful commitment to end the epoch of 500 years of colonialism. We have to devote our efforts to the idea that, the new name for peace is development, and that we will create a new security and development architecture which will implement the interest of every single country on the planet. So that is the tall order we have in front of us, but I'm absolutely confident that if we can evoke the passion of enough people around the world to fight for this, that we can succeed and avoid that we may cease to exist as a civilization.
Helga, if you've just joined us, we want to welcome you to today's EIR Executive Intelligence Review Roundtable, Solve the Immigration Crisis with Development, What You Need to Know about the Strategic Significance of Pope Leo's Encyclical. This is panel 1, titled A Dialogue of Civilizations, Development, or World War III. You've just heard Helga Zepp-LaRouche, the editor-in-chief of Executive Intelligence Review. Our next speaker is Mr. Liu Chang, spokesman for the Embassy of China in the United States. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Speed. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to say thank you to the Schiller Institution for inviting me. It's my real pleasure to join you today. And today's dialogues of civilization is the development of World War III. So I will emphasize on the part of development and share some thoughts of how China sees global development. The title is China and the Global South, a story of shared development. So when it comes to development, people tend to think of GDP, investment, or massive infrastructure project. But for most families, development looks much simpler. It means having light during the night, roads remain open through the rainy season, a doctor available when someone falls ill, a young person learning skills that lead to a decent job. This may sound like ordinary things, but that's exactly what development is about. It's not about making the number look better. It's about making people's lives better. Development matters when a family can feel the differences and when an entire community can share in its benefits. Not long ago, I read a story about farmers in Madagascar planting hybrid rice developed in China. According to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, these varieties can produce between 9 and 11 tons of rice per hectare, compared with about 2.8 tons for traditional local varieties. Those figures are more than statistics. To a local farmer, they could mean something more tangible, fuller granaries, a little more income, and a better chance to keep a child in school. So what can a single grain tell us? It reminds us that development cooperation is only meaningful if it improves ordinary lives. Interconnected world, it raises 4 larger questions. How do we make development more inclusive? How do we protect with lasting peace? How do we enable different civilizations to learn from one another? And how do we build a fair system of global governance? Those are exactly the questions that China has been seeking to answer. First, how can the fruit of development benefit more people? China proposed the Global Development Initiative in 2021. Under the initiative, more than $23 billion have been mobilized and over 18,000 cooperation projects launched. But numbers alone do not tell the whole story. The more important question is whether this effort can change people's lives for the better in Madagascar, I mentioned earlier. Change means higher yield from the hybrid rice. In Papua New Guinea, change could be stand of juncao grass, allowing small farmers to grow mushrooms without cutting down forest, while creating new sources of income. Or it could be in Kazakhstan, where local students can learn practical skills in areas renewable energy, auto and real transportation based on the needs of local industries. What China seeks is not simply to deliver a project and move on. It is to work with the local partners to develop skills, share appropriate technologies, and create opportunities that can take root, continue to grow, and benefit local communities over the long term. Second, what protects the gains of development? For many developing countries, security means far more than absence of war. It also means hospitals can continue to operate during flood, droughts, or public health crises. It means a stable access of food and energy. It means having the resilience to emerge from challenges. A war can destroy a school overnight. A severe natural disaster or public health emergency can set back the development of entire community for years. This is why China proposed the Global Security Initiative in 2022. It calls for a vision of security that is common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable. It emphasizes resolving differences through dialogue and conciliation, while also addressing global challenges such as food security, energy security, public health, and climate change. Peace is the foundation on which development grows, and development itself can help address the root cause of conflicts and instability, creating stronger foundations for lasting peace. Third, can different paths of development respect and enrich one another? China's answer is yes. Every country has its own history, culture, and path of development. Cooperation should not begin with the assumption that one country must first become a copy of another. True civilizational exchange is not about one side changing another, nor replacing the other. It is about learning from each other with equality and respect, drawing inspiration from different experiences, and allowing diverse civilizations to grow together through dialogue rather than compete of exclusions. In 2023, China proposed the Global Civilization Initiative, which recognizes as the greatest value of mutual learning between civilizations is not to erase differences, but to make those differences a starting point for mutual understanding and mutual reinforcement. Last but not least, who should shape global rules and who should those rules serve? Today, the contribution of global South to global development continues to grow. Yet, in some international institutions, its representation and voice remains limited. In 2025, China proposed the Global Governance Initiative, which emphasizes sovereign equality, the rule of international law, mutual multilateralism, and a people-centered approach, and action-oriented cooperation. The goal is not to tear down the existing international system or start over some stretch. Rather, it is to make the system more respective, more effective, and better able to respond to the concerns of developing countries. Global rules should be shaped through the participation of more countries, not written by a few and simply accepted by the rest. The affairs of the world should be discussed and decided together, and the benefit of development should be shared by all. Those four global initiatives reflect China's vision for the future of our world. World development gives people hope. Security protects that hope. Civilizations help us understand one another, and the governance provides fair institutions for shared progress. China has always been a member of Global South. We have experienced the long journey from poverty to development, and we understand that there is no single model for modernization, nor any shortcut that can simply be copied and pasted. China is willing to share its experience, but not to turn that experience into a prescription for others. We are willing to provide support, but not make decisions on behalf of our partners. We are willing to build bridges, roads, and hospitals, but we also want to work with countries around the world to develop the talent and allow people to shape their own future. China looks forward to continue to work with countries around the world so that development is no longer the privilege of a few, but a right shared by all, so that modernization is not painted in a single color, but reflects a landscape of diverse paths and possibilities, and so that every country and every people can take part in shaping our shared future. Thank you very much.
Just heard Liu Chang, spokesman for the Embassy of China in the United States. Our next speaker is Rostam Adabinia, Minister Counselor, Embassy of Iran in Mexico. Welcome.
Hola, buenos días a todos.
Good morning. Greetings to all of you. Thank you for inviting me. And I would like to thank the philanthropic Schiller Institute for this opportunity to exchange ideas. The subject matter is the responsibility of industrialized countries to support the balanced development of developing countries as a way to prevent dangerous migration. If industrialized countries are in favor of peace, stability, and the expansion of global trade, they must invest in vulnerable countries and help improve the lives of their inhabitants. In an increasingly interconnected world, economic inequalities between industrialized and developing countries remain one of the main causes of dangerous migration. Millions of people are forced to leave their homes, not by choice, but due to a lack of opportunities, poverty, and instability. In this context, industrialized countries have a key responsibility to promote more balanced global development. Development support should not be limited to financial aid. It is essential to promote technology transfer, sustainable investment, access to education, and the creation of decent jobs in developing countries. These actions help strengthen local economies, and they offer real alternatives to forced migration. Likewise, international trade policies must be fairer and more inclusive. All too often, trade barriers and unfair practices hinder the growth of emerging economies. A more equitable system would significantly help to reduce development gaps. Preventing dangerous migration does not mean restricting the movement of people, but rather addressing its root causes. When people have decent living conditions in their countries of origin, migration ceases to be a desperate necessity and it becomes instead a choice. Industrialized countries not only have the capacity, but also the ethical responsibility to contribute to balanced global development. This commitment not only benefits developing countries, but also promotes stability, security, and well-being worldwide. In conclusion, if a wealthy person wants to enjoy their wealth, they must help their poor neighbor, help them improve their social standing as well. My neighbor's wealth and peace of mind contribute to the wealth and peace of mind of my own life. Thank you very much for listening.
Very much. And if you've just joined us, welcome to the EIR Roundtable, Solve the Immigration Crisis with Development, what you need to know about the strategic significance of Pope Leo's encyclical. We have just heard the Honorable Rostam Adabinia, Minister Counselor, Embassy of Iran in Mexico. And this is our panel one, a dialogue of civilizations, development, or World War III. Our next speaker is Richard Falk of the United States, Professor Emeritus of International Law, Princeton University. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a great tribute to the Schiller Institute and EIR for convening this roundtable at this time of crisis and of danger, great danger, as has been pointed out, especially in Helga Zepp-LaRouche's introductory remarks. It's a very important historical moment where there are important glimmers of transformative hope, and at the same time there are dark storm clouds gathering above us. And how that works out is very difficult, because on the one side, on the side of the storm clouds, are the dominant structures of global power. The way global power is pursued through military geopolitics, through economic malfunctioning of a constructive approach to development, in a way that poses this terrible threat of World War too, of eco-catastrophe, of the migration, immigration dilemmas that are confronting more and more countries in the world. But on the other side, you have the hopes that I think our Chinese colleague has very vividly and accurately put before us, that there is a possibility of engendering infrastructure development through win-win relationships between powerful and less powerful countries, and yet respecting their sovereign rights to evolve as they deem appropriate. So we have a sense of what is possible, that China has really given the world a pedagogical model. Instead of trying to portray China as an adversary or threat, it's time that the West learned from China. China is in a position to provide a pedagogical model conditioned, as Mr. Chang described, by respect for diversity and dialogue and the wishes of peoples and nations throughout the world. And as I see it, the essence of the problem is, how do we make globally transformative politics into a viable political project? We know what we should be doing. We know what we are doing, but we don't know how to bridge that gap. And it's that gap, unless it's bridged in a relatively short time span, will doom the human future, as Helga particularly depicted the circumstances. And there's no way to jump from this kind of unipolar capitalist economic order to a system of humane development without a politics of transition. How do you get there? And it's not if you wait for a populist change of political consciousness and moral inspiration of the sort that Pope Leo XIV has given in his inspiring encyclical, you have to be very patient, and we can't afford that patience. It's the crisis, as I see it, is how to solve the transition problem, and how to do that in a way that doesn't provoke the very thing it's trying to avoid. Because, as an American, having had contact with the elite structures of power and wealth in the course of my academic career, I know that there will not be a acquiescence in that kind of transformative politics. It will have to come about through confrontation. can be mitigated, perhaps, by a more progressive outlook that has been repudiated in the last decade by the kind of leadership and transactional short-sightedness of the Trump diplomacy. But the underlying issues of structural dominance will not disappear without a struggle. They can be weakened, they can be challenged, they can be delegitimized, and people are speaking out from those that we've mentioned, and in a prior roundtable of the Schiller Institute, the former Prime Minister of Turkey, Ahmet Davutoglu, endorsed the Oasis Plan in its application to a war-ending approach to the Iran conflict. At that time, I was, even though he's a close and longtime friend of mine, I was critical of it because it neglected Iran's only source of security, which is not military retaliation, but is a matter of having these more imaginative ways of neutralizing its total vulnerability to military dominance, just as the Vietnamese, a generation earlier, demonstrated a resilience and ultimately a political victory over a totally dominant American intervention. That lesson that Helga pointed us to about the limits of military power is a lesson that can't be learned by the West. First, because its elites are subject to an outmoded ideology of political realism that believes that military power is the principal agency of historical change and of political conflict, generalized in a way by the outcomes of the two world wars of the 20th century. It also is completely trapped in this short-term pursuit of profitability, of material gain, without any responsible notion of how what is being done now will destroy the life prospects of future generations, including their own children, grandchildren, and so on. In other words, it is a situation that gives us a context for understanding, first, why mass migration is taking place at this point and causing such a humanitarian crisis, both for the migrants and a political crisis for the targets, for their destinations. And it brings out the worst impulses of ethnocentrism in the richer, more privileged countries of the North. And it's true that the best way out is to address the root causes. But again, that's that's long term, even if there was the political goodwill, that cannot happen overnight. And it would have to include the ecological pressures that are resulting from the global warming and climate change dynamics. So we need to find two sets of responses, in my view. One is, how do we mitigate the humanitarian suffering that is embedded in this migration, immigration resistance to immigrants, even in countries that have the means and the benefits of immigration. I mean, as was pointed out, the U.S. has been a beneficiary throughout its history of immigration. And yet now, the only popular issue Trump has at his disposal is his harsh response to the Mexican border penetrations by migrants. But we need short-term mitigation, and we need a transition strategy that gets us beyond the gap, that closes the gap between where we are and where we should be. Let me stop there.
Thank you very much, Professor Falk. And we are going to try to make sure we preserve the time for our discussion period, because we need to discuss exactly the thing that you're talking about. Let me just indicate to the remaining speakers, we have about 24 minutes approximately until we want to get to a 30-minute discussion period and keep everything on schedule. So we'll ask you to be as brief as you can be. You don't have to limit your message, but you have to focus your message. Please do that. And then we'll be able to actually dialogue about it. That was Professor Richard Falk of Princeton University, Professor Emeritus of International Law. Our next speaker is Remi Lebrun of the Schiller Institute in France.
Hello.
Hello.
Bonjour. Bonjour tout le monde. Merci pour
Hello,
l'invitation.
everybody. Thank you for the invitation. I will introduce very quickly a video I created based on the challenge Helga Zepp-LaRouche launched 3 months ago. That was to create a video with artificial intelligence to make understandable what is the Oasis plan and what is, as Mr. Liu Shang, what is the most concrete thing in the life of people, how this project can completely change the life in the Middle East and globally. So this video will be, has been completely created by artificial intelligence, but not the map with the development corridors and also the script. So we could have generate a version in English, French, German, Spanish, Persian, Arabic, Russian, and Chinese. And I don't want to be too long, but what I wanted to insist on was this question of the power of imagination and try to communicate this power of imagination, because I think that there's no worst not to know what can be done, to imagine what can be done. Not an easy solution, but to know that there's a solution. But there's nothing worse than not to know that, not to be able to imagine that. And that is the real strength for our population, to get out of the narrative and to imagine a solution for peace, for the migration crisis. So, and I won't add more, but I will let the video speak for itself. Thank you very much.
In the Middle East, there are those who commit massacres and see nothing but a vast desert. Those who still foolishly lead the United States and the European Union. Then there are those who know that peace is possible, who envision what this crossroads of the world might look like in 50 years. International cooperation to desalinate seawater using nuclear power, satellites to detect and locate groundwater aquifers that we know how to tap, drilling for water dozens of meters underground as part of a major agricultural and desert reforestation initiative, irrigating entire regions within a few decades and cultivating fields and forests where water scarcity is critical today, integrating the Middle East into the new Silk Roads, building railways and highways between Tehran, Baghdad, and Iraq, Amman and Jordan, Sharm el-Sheikh, and all the way to Cairo in Egypt, realizing the 5 Seas project, developing the entire region between the Mediterranean Sea, the Indian Ocean, the Red Sea, the Black Sea, and the Caspian Sea. Build a corridor connecting Deir ez-Zor on the Euphrates River to Damascus, the Syrian capital, and onto Beirut in Lebanon. A high-speed rail line and a highway linking Basra to the Turkish border near Aleppo. Build a tunnel under the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, connecting Africa via Djibouti to the Arabian Peninsula.
I am Avicenna, Doctor. I lived in Persia 1,000 years before you. It is along the Silk Roads that astronomy, poetry, and so many other things cross the world.
I suspect that in your time, extraordinary means of communicating must exist. Make good use of it. What may seem impossible because of wars can become possible by finding common interests.
Build links between Asia, Europe, and Africa. The nightmare of Anglo-American imperialists. Restore Southwest Asia's role as an economic, intellectual, and religious crossroads and peacemaker. Revive the spirit of the ancient Silk Roads. Build mutually beneficial development. These are the only relationships that will enable a new security architecture in the interest of all. This is not for the future, it is for today, and it's called the Schiller Institute's Oasis Plan.
Thank you. That was Remi Lebrun of the Schiller Institute in France. Our next speaker is Timothy Nsima, youth leader of Uganda. Welcome. I think you're muted.
Oh.
Good.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes. Thank you very much. Let me say how glad I am for such a wonderful opportunity to air out a joint statement for creation of the global youth movement. And it's great if it's given out by an African with a global initiative. Yes, the statement reads, "We, the youth of the world, believe that our generation
I think we're having a transmission problem, and we're going to see if we can solve that. And if we, let's take us a moment, we wait and see, and then if not, okay, so then I would like to proceed to the next speaker, which I believe is Jack Gilroy of the United States, member of Veterans for Peace and Pax Christi. He's been at work in the United States, and we very much welcome him. He's not there? All right. Well, then I suppose the what we should then do is to we have, I think, a presentation from Mr. Kotegawa. Is that correct? If not, okay. Yes. So Father Harry Burry is available, but his video is not available. Let me explain therefore to everybody that's watching around on the entire platform. This is Father Harry Burry, Twin Cities Nonviolence. He's an author. He's a member of the United States Catholic Priests Association. He's been a Catholic priest for, well, let's see, 1955, 71 years this year. He's having some problem with his computer, but I understand we have an audio from him. Is that correct? We have an audio feed.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I be heard now?
Sure. Oh,
yes.
Now he's back. All right, fine. A bit of chaos here, but I think it goes to a good cause. So, Mr. Nseima, if you want to try to proceed.
Yes. Sorry about that for the internet connection, but I will try to proceed. Can I be heard now?
Yes.
Yes. We, the youth of the world, believe that our generation has a responsibility unlike before. We have inherited a world filled with incredible scientific achievements. Yet millions of us still live in poverty. Wars continue to divide us. Many people have been denied an opportunity to reach their full potential. We refuse to believe that these problems must define our future. What makes humanity unique is not mere wealth or military power or natural resources, but the ability to discover and create. Every great step forward in history began with an idea, from agriculture to medicine to electricity and space exploration. Human creativity has allowed civilization to overcome challenges that seemed impossible. The greatest resource any nation possesses is its people, their ability to improve the world through knowledge and through innovation. We believe that every nation has something valuable to contribute. No country should be treated only as a source of raw materials or cheap labor or political influence. No country should be marginalized on basis of race or tribe. Every nation is a home of people with talents, with ideas that deserve an opportunity to flourish. In a just world order, it must promote education based on creative reason, scientific research and technological progress, and economic development so that every person has the chance to contribute to humanity's future. Peace, as we know, that is more than absence of war. It is in a world where people have access to food, to healthcare, education, and meaningful work. It is in a world where nations cooperate instead of competing through conflict and exploitation. Recognizing the process of one nation can benefit all. Our generation has the responsibility to break the cycle of hatred and violence that has been passed down for too long. The divide between the nations based on race, color, economic exploitation, or any other habitual difference should stop. Violence has often been answered with more violence, creating generations of pain and division. Many have erroneously, can I be, oh, please, oops.
To be having another technical problem with him. And I would suggest that what we might do is have him reconnect for the discussion period. We also, of course, got a core part of his message. We want to thank Mr. Nseima for being with us. We're going to go for our next speaker to Jack Gilroy of the United States, member of Veterans for Peace of Pax Christi.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we are able to hear you fine.
Okay, good. I would like to say...
Excuse me, France, you seem to be in the wrong channel.
Oh, pardon.
Okay, am I all right?
Now you are, Jack, but please start again.
Okay, Jack Gilroy, and I'm with Peace Action, Veterans for Peace, and Pax Christi. And primarily it's Pax Christi and the International Peace Coalition that have worked together over these past 3 weeks to try to fulfill what the International Peace Coalition is all about, and that is to try to prevent war, nuclear war, and to use, of course, development as the answer, as the alternative to constant military buildups. All of that, of course, is possible, but as you've been outlining, have you been saying for years and years, where are we going to find an answer? And so we're looking back at history and thinking that maybe there is a way out with diplomacy. Diplomacy does work at times, but getting diplomacy started is, as we all know, is extremely difficult. The lesson that we have from the Cuban Missile Crisis was that the intervention of covert action initiated by John F. Kennedy through his good friend, Norman Cousins, who was the director of the Saturday Evening Review of Books. He became a covert operative along with John Scali, who was a ABC journalist, and a Belgian monk became a real key individual in getting to John the 23rd to try to encourage the Pope to speak out in opposition to this pending crisis that the whole world was waiting to happen as Soviet, I should say, missiles were on their way to Cuba. So there was a confrontation that went on for days, but in the meantime, there were side channels, back channels, getting to various people, and especially John the 23rd, a man who was known for his peaceful ways. The Belgian monk, Friar Felix Morleon, Father Felix was the chief individual who took the words or the ideas of JFK via Norman Cousins, got to the Pope. The Pope got on Vatican radio, made an outstanding speech that was actually picked up by Pravda, the leading newspaper, the following day, the leading newspaper of the Soviet Union. All of these came together, and we don't know what really was the deciding factor to get Khrushchev to say, come back. He rerouted his flotilla of ships loaded with nuclear weapons, and they went back to the Black Sea. In an analysis afterwards, just 2 months afterwards, Khrushchev told media and others that the most important thing to him was the first ray of light of hope, and that ray of light came from John the 23rd. Keep in mind that the relations between the Catholic Church and the Soviet Union were tense, to say the least. The fact is that cardinals, bishops, priests who had been imprisoned, there was a tremendously, a very strong anti-Russian, anti-Soviet attitude, anti-communist attitude throughout the whole West. And so to have the atheist Khrushchev meet with John, well, electronically meet with John the 23rd and by letter, and actually say that they became friends was a very interesting take in diplomatic history. And so it's that particular reason that we think that maybe there's a similar opening today. And who do we have to speak to? Well, we happen to have an American Pope, and we happen to have the leading anti-nuclear, nuclear weapons individual in the religious community with John Wester. He's the Archbishop of New Mexico, the infamous New Mexico. Los Alamos is part of his bailiwick. John Wester is appreciated and known by every person of every particular denomination or no faith or no denomination. And so we believe that John Wester, if he is willing, will take our letter and take it seriously, take this letter to the Pope and encourage the Pope to call a conference. Could be at the Vatican, could be at Geneva, could be in Vienna. There are neutral places where this conference could take place between Putin, between Trump, between Xi Jinping, and even Antonio Guterres would be a good move. The president, or not the president, but the Secretary General of the United Nations, Gutierrez, as it happens, is an avowed Catholic. So there are reasons here where we could get individuals of religion or no religion to sit down and talk morality and ethics. And as Pope John the 23rd said, he made the appeal to leaders of the world: listen to the cry of mankind, of humanity. And Khrushchev said that really touched him. It really, really got to him. Was that the factor that led him to back down? It probably was a very important factor, along, of course, with JFK eventually secretly saying he would remove missiles from Turkey. But we want to push this ahead to the point where they get names on the letter. The letter is available. You can find it online at Schiller. You can find a way to sign the letter by just contacting Ron Buttig. His email address is here as well, and simply say you or maybe your organization are willing to get on. And there are some tremendous groups, tremendous people that are involved. For one, for example, Professor Peter Kuznick of American University, he's the director of nuclear studies there. Peter Kuznick was in Nagasaki last week, the lead speaker to Nagasaki government officials, to the media of Nagasaki. And he, of course, is well known because he has taken students for 25 years to Hiroshima and to Nagasaki. He, in his talk, he brought up the letter and encouraged Japanese people to sign on, and they are. The Japanese leadership is signing on to the letter. We have Australians, Europeans, we have South Americans, we have Latino Americans, we have Americans signing on. The author of probably the most respected book for many of us, at least, is James Douglas' book on JFK. The assassination of JFK, the Unspeakable. And he outlines, Jim Douglas outlines the events that took place, including the diplomatic success of Norman Cousins, JFK, the various factors, the various people involved in that Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. So we really believe that we have something going when we have people, for example, like Peter Kuznick, who will, by the way, be speaking with Vatican officials in northern Italy in just a matter of a couple of weeks. Peter, by the way, Professor Peter, formerly worked with some of his colleagues, actually were people here at the Schiller Institute. He has worked closely with the Schiller Institute. But Peter kind of thinks, I guess, that I must travel in the same circles that he does. He asked me if I happen to know Giovanni Battisti. And I said, no, I had a neighbor once by a name similar to that. Well, it turns out that he is the individual speaking with Peter at an annual peace conference in northern Italy, attended by many Vatican officials. And Giovanni Battisti is the leader of the College of Cardinals. Now, you can't go much higher to the Pope than that. And Peter said, if you have any ideas, well, I think what Peter will probably do will be to smile and and shake hands with the Cardinal and give him our letter. We have ways of getting to the Pope, but I think that this may be one of the very best ways that we can get there. So we have a lot of individuals from throughout the United States that have come forward, organizations such as Veterans for Peace and Peace Action and other groups. It doesn't have to be a religious organization. It can be any person or any organization. So I'll just finish by saying, please help us out. Help us spread the word that we are calling for a conference that would be led by, or that would be opened up by, the American Pope, Leo XIV. It could be at the Vatican. It could be at any neutral place, but that the major leaders of the world be there to stop the madness. Mutually assured destruction is what we used back 50 years ago, and that is what it is. It's mutually assured destruction. The whole planet is at risk. So please jump in on this project. And thank you, Anastasia, and the whole team of the International Peace Solidarity Group, because not solidarity, it is solidarity, the International Peace Coalition Group, because there is solidarity coming through. I just want to say that the solidarity is there with all of the organizations jumping in. So thanks again.
Thank you also, Jack. That was Jack Gilroy, a member of Veterans for Peace, Pax Christi, and I believe we now have connected successfully Father Harry Burry of Twin Cities Nonviolence and member of U.S. Catholic Priests Association, and 71 years a Catholic priest. Father Burry, are you able to hear us? And welcome.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Many thanks. Many thanks for the invitation to this significant panel. I'm most gracious, Dennis, for your introduction. And what I need to say and want to say is based on three sources of information. And one of them is Pope Leo XIV and his first encyclical. Encyclical is a letter that is sent to the Catholics and to all humans across the globe who are willing to consider new ideas or different ideas. And the second is the Schiller Institute. And the Schiller Institute's information that I receive every Friday in this program, and from the information that I receive from members of the Institute, which enables me to understand the situation far better, as we heard from Helga today. And the third source of my information is from the existence of BRICS. BRICS, the letters stand for 5 nations in the world, B for Brazil, R for Russia, I for India, C for China, and as you all know, S for South Africa. And so it's from these three three sources that I reach the conclusions that I want to share with you today. And the most important that I want to say is that I believe that the United States and Great Britain and Western countries have begun to realize that threats to the world's society and threats to development in the world's society are not from Russia and China, but from billionaires, financial oligarchy, Epstein's group, who are intent, these financial leaders, so to speak, are intent of being warmongers because they want to make profit and continue to make profit from selling making and selling military armaments. And they want to make sure that they can use their money to their own advantage. And my own experience happened some time ago when I, on vacation, went to Aspen, Colorado to ski. And we queue up to wait to get on the ski lift, and often are joined by one other person who may very well be a stranger. So in this case, I got on the ski lift with a stranger, and I looked around, and as we were going up the mountain, I looked around and I said, wow, this is really beautiful. I wish everybody could experience this. And the person next to me said in strong voice, not me, because I'd have to wait for almost forever to get on the ski lift. So the concern was that the people who are billionaires, this Epstein crowd and the like, the oligarchy, they not only want to continue to make profit, but they want to use their money to their own advantage. And the way to do that, they believe, is to limit the number of people in the world. So they would like to move from some 8 billion people, I understand, to about 2 billion. And so they are the ones who are encouraging and making possible wars, because wars kill a lot of people. You get rid of a lot of people through wars. You get rid of a lot of people through disease. And so, like, they want to see that not healed, but killing more people. And so vaccinations is not encouraged, but rather that the people would die not only from war and disease, violence and disease, but also from starvation, as we have learned here in this program today. And so the concern is to get rid of as many people and go from perhaps 8 billion to about 2 billion people in the world. This is really saddening. It's heartbreaking that it's the reason why we are not empathetic, the reason why so many of us are not compassionate. But what gives us hope is that people now are coming to realize that it is not Russia and China that are our enemies, but these warmongers, these financial elites, these Epstein crowd. And so knowing who are really behind the wars and the underdevelopment of nations being these financial elite, we can then make every effort to end their dominion that they seek to have in the world. And as I said, I've learned this from the Schiller Institute, and there are regular meetings every Friday, and other messages from members of the Schiller Institute, and also from BRICS, BRICS being nations who are practicing the Oasis Peace Plan as promoted by the Schiller Institute. And so they're working to help nations experience equity. That is, to be equal to every nation in the world. They're seeking not to compete, but to contribute to the well-being and the development and the safety of every nation in the world. And when people feel safe in their own country, and when they have decent work, that is just work that makes a difference, and are paid with a just wage, then they don't want to leave. They prefer to stay home, stay in their country. So that answers the challenge that we face with regard to immigration that the Holy Father addressed, and which the Schiller Institute is addressing through the Oasis Peace Plan, peace through development, and the BRICS, who are actually practicing it and making it happen for the whole world. So that's what I've learned, and I'm most grateful to those three sources of information and look forward for continuing learning and growth. And I encourage others to do the same thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Father Berry. And I want people who want to know where America went to know who you just heard. Father Berry in 1971, at the request of some Vietnamese, had himself chained to the U.S. Embassy gates in Saigon to protest the Vietnam War. He spent time in India working with Mother Teresa. He's been arrested, actually countless times, on the cause of peace. He was kidnapped at gunpoint in Gaza, working with the peacekeeping group, and played an important role at that time in certain Palestinian affairs. He was invited by the Pope to say Mass for the beatification of Mother Teresa de Sainthood. And that was after he had been told to not return for a period of time to Vatican City because of his denunciation of certain improprieties and slowness around the issues of war. So he is the conscience of the United States that we wish to re-find. And I just wanted to take the moment to just say that about him. I believe that's the conclusion of the speakers that we have, and we want to move to a discussion process at this point. And so I think we'll try to bring everybody up on the screen. And as we begin, that whether Helga would have something to say about what we have just experienced as a whole.
Well, I want to thank all the speakers for extremely important and valuable contributions, because I think it does require the joint wisdom and experience and difference of approaches to solve this incredible challenge in front of us. But I hope you forgive me when I want to express my special gratitude to Father Berry, because you always touch our hearts in such a way that it does bring forward the better quality. And you have this unique ability. And I want to thank you for that, because it is exactly my conviction that without evoking love to mankind, love for mankind in our fellow citizens, that we will not solve this. And, this is in line with what Schiller, according to whom the Schiller Institute is named, said. He said, the most important requirement of our time, meaning his time, is the development of Empfindungsvermögen, which, in a not so perfect translation is empathy, the ability to feel yourself into the mind and heart of your fellow citizens. And that is love, So I want to thank you, Father Berry, for having emphasized that. I mean, otherwise, I think the question was asked, why? Why do we have a migrant crisis? I said in my initial remarks that we have to make a commitment to end consciously 500 years of colonialism, because the underdevelopment of the global South countries has been the result of colonialism, both in its old form but also in its new form. This was emphasized by President Sukarno and Prime Minister Nehru at the Bandung Conference in 1955, who warned that despite that some countries had gained independence, that neocolonialism would live on in creating the conditions of trade and general financial transactions, which we attacked early on, attacking the conditionalities of the IMF, which prohibited some countries to develop infrastructure or a decent health system by insisting that they had to pay their debt first, and that they had to fulfill all kinds of conditionalities before receiving credit. So, we have to really reform this system if you want to overcome colonialism for good. However, I want to say that if you look at around the world, and Father Burry actually said, it is the class of the billionaires, the Epstein class, which is behind this war because they profit from the military-industrial complex and AI, if it is applied for military means, which Pope Leo attacked very strongly in his encyclica. That we now have to point out that we are not only looking at the remnants of colonialism of 500 years, but there is very, very clearly an effort to build a new feudalism. Because what these billionaires are doing, when they have billions, multi-billions, even trillions, it's completely crazy. What does an individual want to do with trillions of dollars? They are buying real estate, among other things. They are buying entire countries, privatizing resorts, putting up private security in these zones, and that way, diminishing the role of the state and the need of the sovereign nation state to defend the common good. Because if everything is privatized, you are going back right to the conditions like we had it in the 18th century. Only this time it's not nobility and high nobility running countries which have not yet been nation states, but it is private financiers, private billionaires, multi-billionaires, and the like. So I think the need to be aware of this danger of a new neo-feudalism is extremely urgent. So I want to stop here, but these were some thoughts I had while different people were speaking.
Thank you, Helga. I'm going to take the prerogative to just ask whether our speaker from China might have anything to say, since it's 12 hours, it's 1:45 in the morning. Just want to know if there's anything you'd like to add or to comment on.
Thank you. It is a big question, and how the problem of immigrations comes.
I think we lost part of your sound. Could you just repeat what you were saying?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And here today, my topic actually is development. So this a big question, that how to solve the problem of immigrations and where the problem of immigrations comes from. And we cannot say that we can find a perfect solution for the problem, for the questions, but we can share some Chinese experience. And in our view, that the immigrations sometimes we call crisis, sometimes we call problem, comes rooted from the poverty, is rooted from the unequal development in the world, and also many years also the truth within China. In China, I remember when I was 20 years before, it is also a big problem that people rush to big cities, finding opportunities at the beginning of reform and opening up, and the unequal development is a very severe problem also in China, and to deal with this, and it is the first. At first, we need to make a development, and that's the meaning of reform and opening up, so that when the country becomes stronger, when the country becomes richer, so we need to find a solution that to make the underdeveloped areas to catch up with. So this is a two-way road. On one hand, that the government has the policies to help to ask the developed places and cities to make pair with the underdeveloped counties or provinces, and to share the experience, help them to develop the economy, and to send some government officials and also the enterprises to remote areas to build the infrastructures to high-speed road and high-speed railway to connect the cities and the countryside together. And after 20 years of effort, now we see the harvest. More and more young people back to their hometown to create their own companies, to own careers, and to sell the local products to not only to the big cities, but all over the world. The same way we think that can be shared all across the world. We begin with doing business, begin with the development of a certain area of a country or a region. And of course the peace is the principle, and the mutual respect, and the peace and development. And when everyone's hometown developed, and when it can provide enough opportunity to every young people, that means they do not need to just go travel thousands of miles away to the different countries to earn their life. And that's why the full initiative presented by the Chinese government, we willing to make the efforts and willing to share the opportunities. And at last, what I want to say is that we may study from very small cases, like teach the farmers how to grow mushrooms in Papua New Guinea, and help the farmers in Madagascar how to grow the hybrid rice, and from the small and beautiful single cases to a bigger picture. Thank you.
And thank you. And I'd just like to say that I had neglected to remember that you are with our embassy in Washington. So I made a moronic mistake. I apologize for that, but I thought it was funny and I thought I should say it anyway. In spirit, I hope there are people in China watching live as we speak. Let me ask if our representative from Mr. Rostam Adabinia, if you have anything you'd like to say at this point.
Solo quiero agradecer. Muchas gracias. Fue un discurso muy fructífero. Aprovechamos esta oportunidad para agradecer y es que nosotros
I think we
hoy en
need
día,
a translation. Is that possible? Excuse me.
Sí. Hoy en día mi país es víctima de una agresión.
Right now, my country is a victim of an aggression that is very illegal and is a cause. It could be a cause of immigration, and thank God we don't have a situation to escape the war and emigrate. We are there in order to defend their country. But anyway, the instability and war is the most important cause for immigration to countries, to rich countries like United States, or countries that are against immigration should know that the immigration is the main cause is the war. The same war that they are causing in the Middle East. Because people in Iran are not going to emigrate, but because of the instability, economic problems around our area, in the future, we could have a situation where people affected because of the wars can emigrate to search for a new place, which is more stable. We shouldn't complain why people is migrating. That is the fruit of its own politics, aggressive politics. The warmongers caused that problem. Thank you very much for hearing me, and thank you very much for opening this channel to talk and to speak about these topics, about these humanitarian topics. Thank you very much.
You're most
and
welcome,
see you
sir.
soon.
You're most welcome, sir. Professor Falk, I think you're muted.
This has been a very stimulating discussion. The only thing I would add is there's been no mention of the United Nations and the institutions that were established after World War II to promote peace, justice, and development. And they've been undermined by this structure of what Helga referred to as neo-feudalism on the one side and the strategic ambitions of a unipolar world, restoring Western dominance on the other side. We have to, I think, envision how we can reestablish a system of global governance that will be the bearer of some of these values that we cherish and affirm as the foundation for a better future, better human future. And how that is part of what I was trying to express by emphasizing the need to envision a political project of the transition from where we are to where we want to be. We know where we want to be. We have more or less a diagnosis of where we are, but we don't understand the gap or how to close the gap. And I feel that's essential if this is to be a progressive development toward the realization of this vision.
Thank you, Professor Falk. I think Helga may want to respond to this. Helga?
Yes. Actually, I should have mentioned that in my initial remarks, but I did refer to this in a recent article I just wrote. Basically, I think what could happen, and I hope it will not be too late, as far as I understand, the Chinese government is planning, this would actually also be a question to the representative of China, is planning to use the upcoming General Assembly of the United Nations this September to put the 4 global initiatives on the agenda, and there especially the 4th initiative, which is the Global Governance Initiative, which I did read, and it is a very concrete framework of how to put the international relations based, again, on the principles of the UN Charter, but also the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, equality, sovereignty, non-interference in the other affairs, and things like that. So it seems to me that we should, out of this meeting and similar efforts, try to convince all the countries who are members of the United Nations, which is almost everybody, to join in this discussion, because I hope that we come safely into September, which is not guaranteed at the speed of events, but that we prepare, every nation should prepare their own contribution to what the new paradigm should look like and how should the world be organized so that the interest of every nation is being represented. And that way, the United Nations General Assembly this year could become a breaking point, you know, and I said in my article where I call upon responsible people from all nations to step forward and join in this effort, that it could become, you know, the place, you know, where all of the wishes and criticisms what we have expressed today so far could be answered, and that would help to bridge the gap, Professor Falk, what you are saying. And I think if you would use the month of August, you know, to make sure that this idea is circulating widely, and that every nation is making efforts to use that opportunity, that it could become a breaking point.
We unfortunately are nearly out of time. We're going to have about roughly, well, what we'll do is this. We'll go to Remi, who I think had something he wanted to add, then to Timothy, and then ask that Father Berry might say something to us in conclusion, and then back to Helga for our final remarks. So, Remi, if you have something.
Je ne sais pas si je céderai pas mon temps de parole à Monsieur Chang pour répondre à Helga.
Yeah, we don't have. I'm sorry, we don't have translation.
Yes, hello.
Yeah. Yes.
Excuse me. I didn't hear the question.
Well, we simply asked him for any final remarks he had, because I think he had somewhat cut in his presentation. That was just asked him to go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Ok. Non, je voulais juste dire.
I just wanted to say for this conversation.
Ouais, ok. Et juste dire que du fait de l'effondrement du système
because of the collapse of the Western Occident or oligarchical system, we see that what has happened in the Spanish enclave in Morocco, and we see how the European Commission is playing against this game of throwing populations against each other, to manipulate also the debate between the extreme right about who want to deny a perspective of the future to these people, whereas these are people who have seen no future in their country and they've been sent to the sea, often to drown. So I would just like to say that we need to keep in mind the red thread of all of this, what has to be done to solve the crisis and to travel on, to work on that constantly, and not to be distracted by these quarrels between nations among themselves. Is this the problem or that? Because these are just distractions. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. If Timothy is with us still, please.
Yes, thank you very much. It's unfortunate that I've been unable to meaningfully discuss because of the challenges of internet here in Uganda. But these are some of the reasons as to why we are interested in such discussions, because we want to eliminate the energy poverty. We have a lot of load shedding which is happening in Uganda, and that's one of the challenges as to why I blacked out. But leaving that aside, is that we are, as the youth in Uganda, together with a global vision and through the principles which have been clearly described by Helga, we are willing to take part and also be in the lead at the forefront in trying to create solutions to some of the challenges that are affecting our nation today. In my address, as we're leading out the joint statement, there are calls for youth across the world to reason in unison and support major development projects which are to eliminate people and uplift millions out of poverty. And some of them have been already talked about as such as the Oasis Plan and the Trans-Aqua to lift over 40 million people out of poverty, to give them clean access to clean water in Central Africa, but also to support the high-speed rails, which is in line with the African Agenda 2063, but also to talk about the call for most of the youth to come together and oppose the existing wars which may create a global catastrophe to the world. But we hope to carry on our ideas in such conferences which are coming, the United States General.
As he said, that's the problem. We'll do our best to help. Father Barry, final remarks from you. Anything you'd like to add or reflect upon at this point? I think you're muted.
I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to speak at this significant panel. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to listen to people from other nations, and particularly to hear when very few people listen to the people from China and Russia and those people we seem to want to call enemies. So I'm just grateful for this program, and I thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much as well. So, Helga, we're out at the conclusion. Please let us know what your view is.
Well, I can only reiterate why we are here together. The world is in grave danger. As a matter of fact, if everybody would know how close we are to World War III, you would have millions and billions of people in the streets, and they would make sure this is stopped. The problem we have is that the powers to be have this game called control of the narrative, trying to interpret things in the way that you always come out by thinking there is an enemy, and the enemy is Putin or China or whatever, Iran naturally. And I think we have to make a real effort to mobilize everybody. Everybody who is participating in this program should help to spread the word. Take this video from this session and the next one and make a lot of outreach, because I think we need to have a mass mobilization, because I think what we are experiencing right now is a test if mankind has the moral fiber to survive or not. And while I'm optimistic, and I'm an eternal optimist about the potential of the human species, being an optimist also means that the potential has to be realized, because the potential is just the potential and not yet reality. And that requires a lot of work. And therefore, I'm asking everybody who is listening, join us, contact our moderators and basically offer some of your time. We need people who help this process. So, I can only say, if you think about the incredible tension between, on the one side, the potential annihilation of everything this beautiful human race ever created, all the music, the compositions of Beethoven, the poems in all the languages of the world, all of that could disappear because there would be nobody left to even investigate of why it collapsed. On the other side, if we now get our act together, I can see that we could eliminate hunger in half a year. if all the nations would put their minds and acts together, we could put cash crops, not cash crops, crash crops. We could have a mass mobilization to produce a lot of food. We could end this poverty in 5 years. We could have reasonable living conditions for every human being on the planet in less than one generation, much less than one generation. And if we then would reach the next scientific breakthroughs, like getting thermonuclear fusion as a source of energy, we would have energy security for tens of thousands of years, if not more, and one big cause of war would disappear. The billionaires could stay in their houses. We would, give them the right to survive, but they could not rule the world anymore. So I think it is definitely, something which we absolutely should, if you have any fiber of humanity in you, help us and help yourself now. It is the battle of civilization ever.
Thank you, Helga. And thank you, Mr. Liu Chang of China, Mr. Rostam Adabinia of Iran, Professor Richard Falk of the United States, Remi Lebrun of France, Timothy Nsiima from Uganda, Father Harry Burry, Jack Gilroy of Veterans for Peace. We want to thank all of you for listening, and we want to invite you to stay tuned in approximately a half an hour for panel 2, Solving the Migrant Crisis. Does mankind have the moral fitness to survive? Speakers will be from the following nations: United States, Brazil, Guyana, Mexico, Chad, Germany, Uganda, Italy, Burkina Faso, and others. I think a total of 14 nations. And so we very much would ask that you continue on your journey today. This concludes panel 1 of the EIR Roundtable, Solve the Immigration Crisis with Development, the Strategic Significance of the Pope's Encyclical. See you for the panel coming up.
Dave, are we off the air?